Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's very special virtual event. My name is Kat, and I'm the Early Talent Acquisition Manager here at CMS. I'm joined in the background by my colleague Anita Walker, who is an advisor in my team, and she is kindly going to be manning today's chat function for us. So why do I say this is a particularly special event? It's particularly special because, believe it or not, this is the last in our 12-part series of virtual events that we have been running across October and November. So it's been really, really great to see some familiar faces. So we've seen some names and faces across the 12 series, the 12-part series. It's really lovely to see that you've been engaging with our content and hopefully keen to hear more from us. Now, if you have attended before, you'll know that we like to start with a poll and finish with a Q&A. Never one to defer from that pattern. We will be having a Q&A as part of today's session. So if you have got any questions that pop into your head as the virtual event continues, then do pop them into the chat function for Anita, and we will get those posed to our panel of speakers later. So do use that chat function for any questions to do with the content that you're hearing, but also if you've got any kind of recruitment application questions, you can pop them in there for Anita to answer as we go as well. So I mentioned we like to do a poll, so let's kick off with today's poll if we can. Today's question is very much centered around what we're going to be talking about. So how well do you think you understand what future facing means here at CMS? Do you think you know what we mean extremely well by that, or do you think that we mean it not so well? Really, really keen to hear from you on that question. So whilst you do that, I'm really pleased, as I say, to introduce today's session, which is entitled Future Facing Law. Now, as I mentioned, this is the last in the series, so we wanted to finish with a bit of a bang and very much bring to life something that is incredibly important to us here at CMS. So for me, I hear the phrase kind of future facing, legal tech, tech tools. I find some of those phrases, words bandied about quite a bit, but do we really understand what they mean, and do we really understand what they look like in practice? So hopefully today's session is going to answer some of those kind of key questions for us. In a moment, I'm going to hand over to John Krask, who is our wonderful Director of Innovation, and he is going to help us unpack some of those kind of key questions, and he's going to do that with the help of some of his team. So really excited to introduce him in a moment. Before we do that, we are just going to hear how you all felt in terms of the poll. So we've got the poll results coming in. This is the point at which I often feel like it's the Eurovision Song Contest, and we're going to go to various different countries. That's coming in really, really shortly, as I mentioned. So let's just wait and see what that says. Now, I very much suspect, actually, that quite a few of you will know the topic very well because it's a bit of a hot topic. But let's see. So, majority are actually sort of falling into the quite well/well category today. So about 20% are saying well, 46% are saying kind of quite well, with 20% saying not so well at all. So it looks like we've got very much some room for improvement there. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to John, who's going to introduce today's session. Over to you, John.
Thanks, Kat. Afternoon, everybody. And yeah, the poll was really interesting. Hopefully, we maybe should have asked the same poll question at the end to see if we can get some of those 46% up at the top. I don't know if Paul can do his magic and do that, but that would be quite interesting. As Kat said, I'm Director of Innovation here at CMS, and what that means really is to try and help all of the business and our clients make innovation practical and help build that culture of innovation at CMS. So I look after the legal tech team, the legal operations and project management team, our core innovation function, and also we've got a managed legal services offering, and we look after that too. I'm really pleased today to be joined by Liam, Sam, Tycho and Sharon, and they'll all introduce themselves in a little bit. We wanted to give you a peek into what life is like at CMS, and in particular what being future facing means, and a little bit of insight really into the legal tech and innovation piece, and indeed a variety of the sort of routes and roles that a career can take at CMS. And importantly, as Kat said, trying to help understand a bit about what future facing means and make that as practical as we can. So I'm going to talk for just a few minutes about what future-facing means and how, as I said, we're bringing that to life. And then we've got a quick poll just to make sure you're all still awake this lunchtime before Liam, Sam, Tycho and Sharon share a bit about, firstly, what their role is, a little bit about what future-facing means to them, and then a little bit either about a project they've been involved in or about their career to date, so you can get a bit of insight into what life is like here at CMS. But first, and hoping it works, we've got a short video to show you about what future-facing means to CMS people. Paul.
Innovation.
Curious.
Empowering.
Leadership.
Integrated.
Reactive.
Proactive.
Creative. Dynamic.
Resourcefulness.
Brave.
Flexibility. Adaptable.
Curiosity.
Dominant.
Prepared. Inspiring.
So it's always a bit cringe seeing yourself on a video, but that was recorded during the pandemic, and you can see there sort of individual words about what people at CMS think future-facing means to them. So when we talk about future-facing, we've actually got some key things that underpin that for us. So the first thing is about being a mindset. So we think future-facing is about being open to change and optimistic, but also pragmatic as well. So we're always trying to think about what's coming, be as far-sighted as we can and proactive, both internally and how we work with each other, but also, of course, with our clients. Future-facing is about change. So in a world when everything's changing all the time and change is happening more and more quickly, we want to deliver clear and, as it says here, business-focused advice to help our clients face the future with confidence. So, help our clients see what's coming around their particular corner. It's about knowledge and insight. So we pride ourselves on having deep sector knowledge, and so helping our clients get insight into those challenges and then think about smart ways to be able to solve those challenges and shape their future. It's all about relationships. So CMS aims to be the leading relationship law firm, and we do that by building strong long-term relationships with our clients, and that really helps actually understand their challenges, and we know from research that those clients we know best and where we are seen as being innovative, we actually perform better and provide better services as well. So we're not aiming not just to be their legal advisors, but also to get to know them and their business. It's inclusive. So you'll hear from the other people on the panel about the sort of different variety of backgrounds and careers that we've got. I mean, that runs all the way through CMS, and we're really ambitious about changing the face of law so that it reflects the communities and the society that we live in. It's sustainable. We all know how important that is, and so looking towards the future, that's what vision about sustainability is a central part of our approach, and making sure we bring that into everything that we do so that we have a positive impact in all of our communities. It's about collaborating with our clients and our colleagues, making sure that we actually see better results if we collaborate than if we try and do things alone. And that also is true in the teams in CMS. We work very closely across different teams. And then finally, you maybe expect me to say this as Director of Innovation, future-facing is about innovating. We want to be known in the market and internally for bringing really practical innovation, new ways of working, new services to our clients as well. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavour about what future-facing is. But how do we actually bring that to life? How do we do that in practice? So my team, and you'll hear from Liam and Sharon in particular, who are in my team is really focused on that, how we're delivering the legal work. Of course, we need to deliver excellent legal products and services to our clients, but we also have to think about how we do that. So whether we use project management techniques, whether we think about using legal tech, whether we think about what processes we're using, what teams we're using to bring together. So that how we're doing the legal work is really important, and bringing all of the tools we've got to bear and all of the sort of modern ways of working to bear to that is a key part of doing that in practice. We've been investing heavily in tech. We've got quite actually an enviable tech stack and teams who are expert at using it. So, for example, we've got a team of specialists who automate documents. We've got a development team. We've got a design team. We've got a legal tech team, etc. So we've got really quite a strong investment in that tech and the people and teams around that tech in terms of supporting it. We've been trying really hard to develop this culture of innovation in all sorts of different ways. Lots of communication, lots of things like hackathons and ideas, etc., and trying to develop those. And importantly, it's not just about saying it, we've also included it in our competencies and personal development frameworks. So it's part of everybody's reviews and discussions with their managers and their objectives and stuff as they go through their careers, making sure we include that. We've got lots of learning and development sessions at CMS on skills, best practice and use of legal tech. And actually, one thing that I didn't put on the slide, but I wanted to mention was we've also got one of the trainee seats in our team. So we've got a legal trainee who spends 6 months with us before then rotating to the other seats. So that's something quite interesting to know for the future trainees that are out there listening. And finally on here, we want to also collect and use data. I think data is going to be really important in the future for demonstrating the value of this stuff and demonstrating to our clients how we are adding value to them. So we've got a poll for you next. Paul, if you could pop that on the screen, that'd be great. Here, and what we wanted to just talk about and think about for just a minute is, what do you think are the most important skills are for lawyers to have in their arsenal? Now, this is a bit different from the other polls. It's a ranking question. So if you could try and put them in order. We were talking before and we were saying this is quite a difficult question, actually, so it'll be interesting to see what you say. What do you think is the most important skills in order? Is it traditional legal skills? Is it project management skills? Is it business acumen, that sort of commerciality? Is it having an open mindset? Or is it tech skills? And we actually we thought about having an option of all of the above, but we thought you might all just pick that. So we've given you a tricky question here. So whilst that's on the screen, we'll just give you a second or two before the results come in. I can see Naomi's typing. I don't know if anybody else has any, on the panel, has any thoughts about that, about the question? Right, Sharon, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with you, John. It is a very tricky question when you're trying to rank them. And I think it's also, when I think about it, it's whether I think about it with my ex-lawyer head on as to what I would have ranked, and then also thinking about what our clients rate from us now. And I think that's changed a lot over the last 20 years since I qualified. The things that have now become increasingly important.
Tycho, what do you think?
I'm going to come in with the controversial take. Traditional legal skills, I think, are really important. I think the other skills are important, but I think when clients are ranking these sort of things, traditional legal skills are a given. You have to have that. You're not even going to get off the starting blocks without that. I think to then be able to deliver that in a way that works as a business and to be able to, maintain clients and earn money, you definitely need those other skills though to compete in today's environment. But there's no point even looking at it until you've got some good legal skills. Thanks, Tycho.
So I think whilst if that poll's disappeared for some people, if there's a technical thing, then apologies everybody. But before we move on, I think, Tycho, that's an excellent segue into asking Liam to tell us a little bit about his role and things. Because actually my view is that, of course, lawyers perhaps need all of these things, but in the future we're going to see sort of a blended teams where there might be a technologist alongside, not sitting somewhere behind, but alongside the lawyers in terms of delivering our legal services and things. And it's about building the right team for each of the jobs and projects and things that we have on. We've got the results in now, so really interesting. People pretty much put evenly the things that they think is the most important thing at the top. So it was, we just about open mindset, just about pips it, but very, very even in terms of about 20% each on those things. Anyway, without further ado, I'm just going to hand over to Liam, and he's going to introduce himself and tell you a bit about his place in CMS and what future facing means to him. Liam.
Thanks, John. And yeah, looking at those poll results, it's actually quite interesting. It was quite a nice segue from your discussion there about a blended team and the fact that we've got blended answers as well. There's also quite pertinent to that response as well. So yeah, that's really good to see. So my name is Liam Cox. I am a legal tech product manager here at CMS, specifically looking at R&D, so research and development. So what does that actually mean, right? So that means for me, it's going out into the legal tech market, looking to see what's new, what's innovative, what things that we really want to bring into the firm. And then that's sort of assessing what our teams are requesting, sort of demanding, and also things that we find really interesting. Bringing those back into the firm and seeing, right, like where does this fit with our current tech stack? How can we implement it? What's going to be the most beneficial? Can we get return on investment, etc.? So working with the teams on that. And that also means that going through our internal procurement onboarding processes to make sure that once they've been implemented and purchased by the firm, we're actually using them. So we don't just buy tech for the sake of it. It actually has a purpose. And the second arm to my role is also to work with, as John mentioned, our internal development team. So we've got a development team that predominantly focus on iOS app development, and it's working with those and our fee earners as well, in particular, to bring the fee earners' ideas to fruition and ultimately, hopefully, into apps. So I've been in this role since about August, so it's still kind of fresh, but it's really, obviously, like I think it's an incredibly interesting space. So what does future facing mean to me? So John's kind of touched on a couple of points, but I just wanted to hone on the fact that I think it means being sort of proactive and seeking to challenge the status quo, particularly in regards to how we deliver our legal services. So what does that mean? Because that all sounds quite buzzwordy. So when I talk about proactive, I mean sort of predicting and responding to our clients' needs first, ahead of everyone else. So putting their needs at the heart of what we do, going out to them and saying, right, we're looking out, especially with the role that I've got now, is being like, right, these are the challenges that you face. How can we help you with that? And building out that open dialogue and working together with the clients rather than in the traditional sort of legal representation way in which we govern our relationship. And status quo, challenging the status quo. What I mean by that is sort of asking two fundamental questions. Why are we doing things in the traditional way? So in particular with the way that we deliver legal services, and how and if and how we can seek to improve the way in which we deliver those. And at CMS, I think we're really strong in being able to sort of ask those questions and try to improve the processes in which traditional quote unquote legal services were provided. And I just wanted to touch on the fact as well that future facing is becoming more of an expectation now rather than nice to have. And this was actually quite pertinent and relevant until especially last week, because myself and John were involved in a pitch to a potential client. And the pitch actually was quite interesting because the pitch was solely about essentially a consultancy for legal tech and managed legal services. There was no traditional legal services, traditional fee earning that the potential client wanted. They just wanted essentially a law firm with the knowledge and expertise of legal tech and how to proactive and efficiently provide legal services, to essentially just give them what we thought was a consultancy arrangement to help them and assist them through the large and sometimes complex legal tech space. So that was something that was quite interesting in the fact that we always talk about and mention future facing, but we actually now are seeing it properly in practice, and it's even with the pitch, and that's what the clients are expecting. So talking about a bit about my journey as well. So it's been I've been involved with CMS since it would have been about September 2016. So I started as a brand ambassador actually at the University of Nottingham. So I did that for a year, and that helped me as well obtain a training contract. I undertook my training contract. It got my onto the CMS Academy. And undertook the CMS Academy in 2017, which gave me, I was lucky enough to get a training contract for the start of 2019. In between starting my training contract and finishing the academy, I actually had the opportunity to paralegal in two of our teams. One was our general sort of litigation, and also then our insurance team. And it's one of the questions that was actually quite funny. It was actually quite funny because the sense of we have a CMS evidence, which is an e-disclosure sort of arm of the firm as well. They picked up on the fact that I was interested in building PCs. I got to work with them, and that kind of exposed me to the world of tech, essentially within firms, and how it helps and assists with service delivery. So I worked with them, undertook my training contract in 2019. And I, as part of my fourth and final seat, I actually had the opportunity to do the innovation seat, which John touched on earlier. And I used that to sort of go and gain the skills, especially in sort of understanding how the business of law operates. Took that back into qualification as an associate in one of our finance teams, and now I'm back within our the innovation team. So yeah, it's quite a whirlwind tour within the firm, but obviously I've been here now for quite a while, and I obviously just really enjoyed being part of the team. And I just wanted to touch on quickly what you can do to prepare and sort of touch on this future facing and kind of innovation space, because I appreciate it seems like it's an extremely broad topic. It's not, innovation doesn't just touch legal tech. It talks about the ultimate process of how are we doing things and how can we improve the way in which we're doing things, right? So the answer isn't always tech. It can also be process changes. I'd recommend there's tons of materials out there to sort of get an understanding and how to approach this space. There's a book recently that came out, I've just got it to my right here, called The Legal Team of the Future, which touches on sort of technology, but it also talks about how legal teams will be shaped in the future, and it's really a really interesting read. Unfortunately, I don't, but I wish I got royalties for every time I gave it a shout out. But I would really highly recommend it, and it's really a great book to get to grips with it. And I just touched on the fact that it's becoming more prevalent in the market. Law firms are expecting training contract applicants to sort of understand this space as well. So it is a topic that can come up in kind of interviews and in the beginning of applications. So just make sure that you're aware of it. But yeah, I appreciate that's a whistle stop tour. But now I'll pass over to Sam to talk about his BD training experience.
Thanks, Liam. Yeah, over to you, Sam.
Thanks both. So I'm Sam McKenzie, and I'm a business development grad at CMS. As part of the very first intake onto our kind of special business development and marketing graduate program. So I'm just going to, as I've got a slightly different experience, I'm going to lay this out a bit differently. So I'm going to introduce my journey to get here, and then the work that I've done at CMS, and I'm going to finish by going over how future facing is, in my opinion, because I think it might become a bit different from everyone else's because of my journey. So my journey is a bit different because I was really never looking to get into the legal sphere, if I'm honest. And it was through the fact that I graduated last summer with a history degree, so very much not exactly planning on going to it, but I was looking into communications jobs at the time, and I managed to find this program, and it's a focus on comms and marketing. And then looking more into it detail, I was really interested in the way the program was structured, and the way it got me involved in so many different parts of the firm. And the way that it was structured was really interesting to me, because I think part of this was my perception of going into legal was, I feel like law firms are so much focused on the idea of the legal work and lawyers existing without much thought about the way that business services and business support are also make up so much of the firm and are so much a vital part of a law firm in these days. So I'm going to quickly go over the way the program is structured, because it is structured very similarly to a training contract in that it's a 2-year program and is over 4 seats. And I am currently a year into the program, so I've just started into my 3rd seat. So the 4 seats are practice group and sector business development, which is all around supporting our practice groups, so types of law like real estate or corporate, and as well as our different sector focuses such as like financial services companies or energy Then we've got client management, which is all about supporting our strategic client program and really getting hands-on and working with some of our largest clients on supporting them and supporting the lawyers that work with them. We also have the new business team, which is otherwise would be known as the pitch team, and it's all about focusing on developing new business for the firm. And that's either through getting more work with existing clients or by reaching out and working to get new business from new clients. And then finally, the fourth seat is that of communications and branding, which is all about internal comms, external comms, and just how the firm is shown to the world and how people are able to perceive the firm, as well as making sure everyone within the firm is aware of important information about the firm. So my first seat when I started in September 2021, so a bit over a year ago now, was in the pitch team, in which I was able to get and work on a load of different pitches for a whole variety of clients, those from the public sector to large multinational companies. So the way that a pitch process works, I'll just give a quick overview of this, because I know Liam touched on this earlier, is that so you have companies who come to you when they're looking to create a panel, they've got a specific project, and they'll require legal support on that. And so they will go out to tender to a whole multiple law firms, potentially so many different firms of different sizes based on what they want. So we'd get this, and then we'd be given something called an RFP, which is also known as a request for proposal. And this is something that we'd get, and we'd have to respond to this with a series of questions that the client has asked. And so my job within this team would be to help gather the information that we need to give to the client and help gather this information and work across the whole firm. So work from our various different teams to help gather this information, and then work with teams like our design team just to create a final document and make it all look very nice, showing just how large business services in the firm. So this is a really interesting role in the firm that I think I would not have existed. And the responsibility I was given was by the end of this 6-month seat, I was able to actually get a chance to lead on a pitch, showing just how the culture of CMS and the way that I was able to get involved so hands-on even just 6 months into my time at the firm. So my second seat was that of client management, where I would help on a lot of client reporting work, where we've got and other information for client meetings, which is where largely a lot is keeping our clients up to date on the work we're doing for them and similar stuff to this. But one of the things I was really privileged to get involved in during this seat was working with our Equip program, which is this really innovative offering that I find that CMS does, which is where it acts as a sort of accelerator program like exist for specifically startups, because startups exist in this world where they will often be sometimes set up by people who have got no idea of what they will need to do in their business world. And so accelerators will exist to help these startup companies to get out there, and the Equip program is there specifically in a legal capacity to help these clients and help build them up and give them the legal support they need. And so I was able to work on this program, which is a really innovative and a very future-facing thing, is to recognize that it's not just it's companies of all sizes that need it, and there is this, especially the work that the Equip program does is focus on very much tech startups. So it's looking at these real innovative tech offerings throughout there, from fintechs to so many different tech companies. We've got medtech, and we've got other ones like this focusing on sustainability. So there's just so many different types. And then my final seat, which I've now been in a month for, is in comms. That's dealing with a lot of internal and external facing communications, whether that be helping to update our website to ensure that it's up to date and publicizing work that we're doing. And so that's a brief overview of what I think of my time, and to give you an understanding that there is so much more to a law firm than just law. And so my view of future facing, I think, has been developed through the way that I've interacted with different stakeholders across CMS. And I think I'm looking at it more with an ESG lens than a tech lens, and the way that in today's evolving society, with stuff like we've got COP27 on directly at the moment, which is actually great timing to be talking about this, because there is so much need for this sustainability and focus on the environment and the world around us. And law firms particularly have a massive role to play in this, whether that be in supporting their clients into adapting to this world and helping support them to become more sustainable themselves. And that's both in the sustainability world or in stuff like social development and social equality and there's so many different sectors where there's stuff like the support our clients need, where we've now got more regulatory and reporting duties that businesses of certain sizes have to report on key diversity statistics and stuff like this. There is this more developing world and information like that. But I think so law firms and future facing law is relevant in this and supporting clients, but also in law firms doing it themselves. So there's no point in just advising firms if we don't follow it. It's a great way to look at it is law firms are there to help set the best practice. I think CMS does this is we're not just to follow the best practice, we're there to help set the best practice. And we're able to undertake this through both support, making sure we're sustainable and we're properly a diverse culture, diverse in ideas and diverse in people. And these are the key tenets across the ESG sphere that I think make future-facing law what it is. And that's why I think, and my view is probably not as what tech is important, and I will admit tech is important. There is this other world of ESG. So that's all from me, I think. And I'm now going to hand over to Tycho to talk a little about.
Thanks very much, Sam. As you mentioned, my name is Tycho Orton. I am a second seat trainee, currently sat in the restructuring and insolvency team, which is quite busy at the moment, as you might imagine, with the current economic climate. I'm here to talk about the CMS Coding Club and coding competition. But before that, I will talk a bit about what does future facing mean to me as well. Now, up front, the key message I want you to take away from my talk is that people at CMS are very much future facing, but they're also very time poor. And so it's up to you to drive innovation. So what does future facing mean to me? As John and Liam and Sam have discussed, there's a broad range of things. And the reason it really matters, I think, for me, is to do with justice. The legal market is incredibly underserved. 50% of UK adults have faced a legal problem in the last 3 years. On average, a small business faces 8 legal issues per year, but only 1 in 3 people with a legal problem seek professional advice, and only 1 in small businesses take legal advice in regard to those issues. And the key problems there are affordability issues and lack of information as barriers to access. So really, law needs to be much more efficient, and there's space to be much more efficient. There's this huge market for legal services that just doesn't get served because it's too expensive, and there's some processes that mean that people don't have enough information. And really, the only way we're going to solve this is to be much more efficient, to be able to deliver a lot more legal services in a short amount of time. And that means that we need to spend more time on high value add activities. What I mean by that essentially is doing the legal analysis, the thing that you went to university for 3 years, or you've done your GDL to learn, and then honestly, you spend the next 20 years of your career learning as well, rather than messing around with the formatting of documents, copying and pasting, printing things out, and so on. And not only, I think, will that deliver better outcomes for people from a selfish perspective, potentially, it's much more enjoyable work. The reason I wanted to get into law was because of the interesting legal problems that you discover and solving those with people and delivering great outcomes for clients. And so being able to work in a better way is good for society, but also good for the individual lawyers. I think just quick, before I get into the coding competition, one way to quickly touch on this, when I first started, I had to produce about 60 documents. They're all pretty much the same, but maybe had a different company name or some different share numbers in them. And I was able to find some code on the internet, adapt that, and use that to create these 60 documents. And so instead of it taking me probably a full day's work, a good 10 hours, it took me 2 hours. And that's the sort of thing that you can do. And people really do support you and welcome that at CMS. They can't do it themselves. They don't know how to do it because they're too busy. But when you're able to do it and show them the benefits, people are very open to that. So turning to the coding club and the coding competition, For several years now, it has been the aim of the partners in our technology team to have more CMSs who know how to code. This is so that the fee earners better understand clients, and obviously there are some marketing benefits to this in terms of being able to win more clients and explain that we know all about technology. And it also means that we can deliver better results when we do win those jobs, because we do actually better understand our clients. It's not just marketing speak. And beyond that, coding is a very logical way of thinking. You're having to set out what is happening in a very precise way and account for all the different possibilities. And so in that way, it's actually a lot like legal drafting. And my experience of learning to code is that it has improved my legal drafting significantly. Now, the only problem with this, as I've mentioned, this has been a name for several years. It had never happened. And that is because the partners in the tech team are incredibly busy doing legal work and running the business. So they had no time to organize it. And so they really needed someone with more free time and a willingness to drive the process. I was early in my first seat, and even though as trainees we are busy, there are definitely times when you will have less work. And so at the time, I was not too busy and I thought this was a very interesting project. And so I enthusiastically volunteered to organize it. So what we did, we opened up a survey. We invited applicants to take part in this coding competition. You would have 4 months in the end to code anything you wanted, and then present that, and we would have prizes. We plan to send out 50 Raspberry Pis, which is a sort of cheap computer, so that people could code their project on that. In the end, we had so many applicants, were so oversubscribed, we ended up sending out over 70 Raspberry Pis. The only problem was that we had 70 people, most of whom had no coding experience, and they were led by me, and charitably, I'm very much an amateur and a beginner at coding still. And the problem we ran into was that most of these people didn't really know what they could code. They didn't know how to learn to code, and they didn't have the time to find out and go on the internet. There are lots of resources on the internet, but as many of you probably know, the trick is to find the useful bits. And so while the advantage of this open-ended project was that it allowed people to pursue their passions, and when you're pursuing your passions, you're interested and you're going to spend more time on it, but people didn't know how to get started, and so that was a real problem. And so I then went back and changed a bit what was happening so that we started running some informal co-coding sessions, allowing people to get together, adding a social aspect to it, and also getting people, essentially by doing that, to block out some time when they were going to focus on coding, rather than it slipping and them deciding they would just do a bit more work, actually. I also circulated numerous resources and courses to help people learn to code so that they weren't having to look for these things themselves. And I invited questions. In the end, we had some great submissions for our coding competition. We had 2 winners. The first winner had developed a Twitter bot that takes a random list of words and suggests inventions and checks if they've been patented. And you can actually follow that on Twitter. It's @CuriousFredBot. Check it out. The second one was essentially a Flappy Bird clone, but with a bee instead of a bird. And so it was an addictive game, and it also linked into some of the work CMS is doing on ESG, and the background was displaying various ESG messages on it as you would play along. This was our first successful run, and as you might have gathered from what I've said, we definitely ran into some challenges. And so looking forward, we're going to try and provide a more structured learning framework so that it minimizes the effort people have to take to get into coding and to start learning, so that their effort is focused on actually learning rather than trying to, I suppose, work out how to learn. So I'd like to leave you just with a few points. The first thing is, you're going to be the one with the most free time in the company probably. And so it's up to you to drive change and innovation. I've done that in tech, but it doesn't have to be in tech. There are all sorts of projects going on. The next point is you don't have to be an expert. It's much more important to just be someone who can put in the time, and you can learn as you go. And the final thing is it's actually a good way to enjoy your work more, I think, if you have one of these projects on the go, because there will be times when you don't have much fee earning work. And so that's just a way to enjoy yourself more. I'd now like to hand over to Sharon to talk about her points.
Thanks, Tycho. Hi, everyone. As Tycho said, my name's Sharon. I'm one of the senior innovation managers at CMS. So a little bit about me, firstly. I've been at the firm the longest, I think, as you can probably tell by looking at me. I joined in 2000, and I was a trainee back then and joined and came quite a traditional route. I was first of all did a law degree, did the LPC, and joined for my training contract in 2000. And back then in 2000, I guess there was no such thing as legal project management, legal tech, nothing that we'd really come across. We had just, and this is how old I am, just started using emails, and we still sent letters when we needed to attach documents because you couldn't attach documents to emails. So that's how far we've come in my career since 2000. And I think if you fast forward a few years to sort of explain how I got to where I am now, back just post-Brexit, I think if Brexit hadn't happened, it's probably the only good thing, I probably wouldn't have changed careers. But post-Brexit, the summer of 2016, there was a big downturn. I was a real estate lawyer, had been for 15 years, working on some really big, exciting transactions, and suddenly they dried up because obviously no one wanted to take risk post-Brexit. It was a very quiet summer, and it was just doing lots of things that weren't very interesting. I felt like I'd taken a step back and the big projects weren't there. So spoke internally and managed to second in the business. At the time, I was at Nabarro, it's one of our pre-merger firms, and just asked if there was opportunities to second in the business because I felt I needed to change. There was a change team, as it happened, that I went to, and timing is everything. A few months later, the merger was announced, and then suddenly for the next 6 months, I was heavily involved in lots of different projects leading up to the merger, looking at, pulling together lots of different papers of the board and how we would bring the three firms together. So moving forward to May 2017, when the merger happened, I had the choice. I was expected, I think, to go back to my fee earning team, but I'd started to enjoy and looking at doing things differently. And luckily at that point, John, who you've heard from earlier today, was looking to set up an LPM team. And so John and I, sort of 5 years ago now, started that journey of looking and focusing on the how we deliver our work. And that's what LPM started as. It's grown significantly over the last few years, and obviously now encompasses innovation, tech, and the things that John talked about as well. But I think why I took that jump at the time, and I think I felt it felt a little bit jump into the unknown because it hadn't really been explored. But it was just really playing to strengths of I'd always been interested in the how we did things for our clients. I was probably project managing without even realizing it on the transactions I've been working on, but without any sort of structured framework, and starting to see the way the industry was moving. I think obviously now we all recognize the importance of the delivery being one of the differentiators we have as a firm. We're a people business. We sell our services, but all law firms have the legal expertise, otherwise you wouldn't go to them. It's just that what differentiates you is how you deliver it, how you understand your clients, the people element, and us as individuals, but also what systems and technologies and things that are coming along that can make us work smarter and better, but ultimately working both to help our clients and hopefully to help our lawyers be more productive in what they're doing so they enjoy their jobs more. And so it's been a great opportunity for me over the last 5 years. I've done a number of roles, and in the last couple of years particularly, being aligned to the real estate practice, working alongside my old peer group, many of whom I still know and are now partners in the firm, and understanding that business and understanding how we used to do things and being able to help them and look for solutions to do that better. So before I just give a couple of examples of practical projects to try and make the legal tech come to life rather than it just be a buzzword, in terms, I was thinking about this, I hadn't really thought beforehand about future facing. To me, I think it's all of the things that everyone's talked about today. It means a lot of things to different people. I think for me, being at a firm that's been so supportive of career changes, both Liam's obviously moved from being a trainee into our team. I obviously have been a fee earner, bringing in quite significant income to be allowed to diversify in the business and to still be valued by the firm to perform a completely different role. And I think it shows that the heart of the firm being willing, I guess, to be as open to change and having that mindset to say yes and to support people it's ultimately at the culture and being valued for input that you give and recognizing the importance, I guess, now of both innovation and how we do things differently rather than just straight fee and then obviously I've done up to then. So quickly, because I'm conscious of time, just a couple of projects that I've worked on that give you some flavour of the types of things that we do. Working with the real estate practice, obviously very document heavy, produce lots of leases, lots of suites of documents for our clients. We've got lots of landlord, big institutional clients. We're working on the Battersea Power Station deal the last 5 years as a great example. And so our lawyers previously, and as I always had, you get instructions in from a client and you need to send out a pack of documents, an agreement for lease, a lease, and license, probably 10 documents sometimes on each instruction you get in. And that's the first step you take, and then you start negotiating those documents. So the instructions often land typically on a Friday afternoon because the agents want them off their desk, and suddenly you've got to get them out. And the old way would have been that you would have gone into the system. Yes, they're on the system, we have precedents. So you type in the landlord tenant names, lots of different things, multiple times into lots of different documents, or you might mark it up by hand, give it to your secretary to type, and you'd get them back. So what we did as a project 3 or 4 years ago now, we have lots of precedent documents, and I mean lots, 50, 100 plus, and different clients have different types of documents for different schemes. It's just a never-ending list. What had prevented us looking before at document automation was just the time up front to get that off the ground. It needs, back to Tycho earlier, being coded into a system. But the solution itself, which we've now invested in by having a dedicated resource that came on board to specifically focus on getting those documents coded into the system. And what that's meant is most real estate lawyers now, when they get a new instruction in, and I had examples just in real time, it used to take 3 hours to get a basic pack out in an afternoon. It can now be done in an hour. And that's because they answer a questionnaire really quickly, and then it populates all of the documents with the information that they've typed in once. So the questionnaire is a dynamic questionnaire. You answer a question, it brings up the next question if you've said yes or no, and it's intuitive to fill in then through the coding all the things you need. Now, for our advanced suites of documents like a Battersea, where there can be 10 documents plus, including reports, you're talking about saving of probably 3 or 4 days of time from getting that whole pack out. So I think there's now, a move towards sometimes it not being the most exciting piece of tech. We've got quite a lot of AI tools and other things that would probably be perceived as more whizzy, but in terms of how they're applied in the business and the difference it's made to lawyers in practice, I think that's what excites me most sometimes about how it's back to spotting the opportunities. What changes can you make that are going to make an impactful business, impact on our clients, because we can get things out quickly, but also it helps our lawyers, back to Tycho's point previously, not to be doing the mundane work day to day. You don't want to be having to check multiple documents and typing in the same things, into the same things. It's not what you went to law school for. So one other project I was just going to mention, because it is interesting again, it's for looking at AI tools. So one of the other things I was involved in before we helpfully got Liam on board to do this now was looking and trialing lots of new technologies. And I think the one thing that we have going for us, I guess, is if you understand the business and you understand the work you do and the clients you have, it's far easier to spot a solution to something that you've been, struggling with, rather than approaching it from we're constantly sold technology and people approach us, cold call us all the time. But it isn't about finding the next shiny new tool and hoping for the best. It's about going out to market with a real need. And as I said, back to real estate, which I was aligned to at the time, we do lots of buying property. And when we buy property, we review land registry documents time and time again, the same process manually. And so finding tools now in the market, and the AI has come a long way, that can be reading and summarizing those documents for you, basically like a paralegal would have tabbed them up for you in the old school way, for a lawyer to then go and commercialize and review those documents. So it's very important to stress the AI does not replace our lawyers. It's just doing a first cut for lawyers to then be able to look at that information. So again, it's speeding up review. And one example recently, we sort of had 200 titles we had to look at. Avail that we've purchased as a tool that helps with this can do that in about 15 minutes. It can summarize and populate those. I mean, it's the sort of time frames, no superhuman would be able to do. So I think it's making use of the technology in the right way, but to enhance our lives and to make things ultimately better and hopefully quicker. So without further ado, I'll hand back to John now. We've got Q&A.
Great. Thank you, everybody, and hope that all of you watching and listening found that useful. So 4 very different insights into future-facing CMS. So we've got a few minutes for questions, and thank you to those of you who've been putting questions into the chat. So we'll cover off as many of those as we can before Kat wraps up the session just before past. So first question is from Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. And I'm going to ask Liam to answer this. But how will the firm ensure there's a continuing focus and investment on innovation, even in the face of a looming recession?
Yeah, thanks, John, and thanks, Sarah, for the question. And obviously, with a recession, the tendency is for everyday people to stop spending, right? But the fact is that we need to be. This isn't when we're investing, like specifically in legal tech. We're not investing just for the short term. We're investing for the future more generally, right? So it's there as a rather than just a short term win. It's there for the long term. So we're going to be. It's going to be sort of more important at that point to be investing in legal tech and being innovative. And the reason for that, in particular, just a couple of points, is with the way that we structure the innovation in legal tech, we're looking for greater efficiencies, and that's what our clients will be looking at, especially in a recession, because they'll be reducing ultimately how much they want to be paying for their external legal services. So in fact, it will actually be more beneficial in the long term to be investing in the legal tech innovation, working out how to improve greater efficiencies, stuff like that. In the long run, and it will help in maintain our client relationships through the bumpy period and hopefully beyond.
Great, thanks, Liam. Next question, we've recently built out the Pension Law Appraised app, and if you want to know what that is, then just Google it and you'll see that actually it was launched this week. Are we able to talk to how this came about and how it was progressed internally? Probably there's a much longer answer to that question that we don't have time for, but all of our practice groups are encouraged to come up with innovation projects, and actually we have a way of supporting innovation projects. We call it Innovation Hours, where we reward our lawyers for the time that they spend on innovation projects in the same way that they get rewarded for their financial contributions. And this was one of those projects. And we, as a central team, support the lawyers in the practice groups. We don't try and own or take over all of those ideas and projects, but we support them when they pop up with whatever help they need. And in this case, it was our IT development team that worked with the pensions team to produce that app. Okay, next question. We've got one from Anisha here. Thanks, Anisha. As legal tech and innovative ways of delivering legal services become more important, what's the main advantage CMS specifically has over other firms? Sharon, I think I might ask you to take that one.
Thanks, John. Thanks for the question. It's an interesting one because, as you've probably noticed, lots of firms have very similar offerings now. We have teams, you have innovation teams. In the top 10, you're going to have firms that will all have legal tech and be invested in, hopefully, because they know the importance. I think the differentiator, if you look at it, as I started speaking earlier, it's how you approach it. So our approach is very client focused. It's about aligning with our clients, and it's about, first of all, understanding and looking for the challenges and the problems we want to solve, rather than just buying tech for tech's sake. And it's also about how we ensure adoption and use then of the tech through the practice groups. It's not just about buying these things if no one is using them. So having innovation rep groups in every practice, John's mentioned innovation hours, it's about creating that culture around the firm so that these things are really on the forefront of everyone's minds, rather than just having a small team of people giving a lot of talk about it, but it all comes through delivery and actual real value in the business and for our clients. And I think that's where we probably stand out.
Great, thanks, Sharon. We've got time for one more question, which is there anything CMS could be doing better with regards to innovation, in our view? Again, I'm sure we could talk about that for ages. Tycho, a quick answer from you?
Yes, I think there is a lot more we can be doing. Not that we're doing badly, but there's always room for improvement. I think key points is this idea of everyone being time poor, and there could be a lot more space for people to engage with innovation and use a lot of the innovative tools we actually have. I think also, if you look at our project management and our tech, while we're good for a law firm, we're potentially a long way behind the leaders in the economy. Our tech compared to tech firms is a long way behind. And so there's great room for improvement, and it's easy to see where we go because we don't have to come up with it ourselves. We can mostly follow others.
Great. Thanks, Tycho. And so finally, from me and all of the people who spoke in the panel today, thanks for your time today. It's been great talking to you. Hope you found that useful. Back to you, Kat.
Thanks so much, John. That's amazing. That was hugely interesting, certainly from my perspective. I can be honest and say I have learnt a lot. You know, we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about coding competitions. We talked about working smarter, about being innovative, and we even had a few book recommendations in there as well from Liam. So that was great to see. Now, as we like to do, let's see how you guys found that. It's really great for panelists to have some immediate feedback. So if I can take us to a run of the poll, actually. So very similar question to what we asked you previously, but how well do you now think, having attended today's session, that you understand what future facing means at CMS? So I'll just give you a couple of moments to just flick over those. In the meantime, what we'd normally do at this point, and if we can move on to the next slide, John, that would be amazing. What we'd normally do at this point is to do a little plug of our upcoming virtual event season. But as I mentioned right at the beginning, this actually is the last one in the series. So I can't do that, but to reassure you that this isn't the last chance that you'll have to engage with the team by any means. Check out our events page on our website. There's all of the details of the upcoming events that we're going to be at. Off the top of my head, in the next couple of weeks, we've got things like the Legal Cheek November Law Fair, and we've got actually a dedicated business development program. So leading on from what Sam was talking about earlier, we've got a business development program session that we're running next Thursday. So you can sign up for there and find out some more details about that on our events page. Finally, we have got all of our events that we've run so far in the series available for you to listen to the recordings of on the website. This particular session will just take a few days for us to upload, so bear with us while we do that. But if you have missed anything from the last 11 sessions, then you can take a look and check out the recordings on our website. Finally, as well, just to say, as an attendee of this webinar, you do have access to the CMS portal, and that's got all sorts of application hints and tips from a number of the graduate recruitment team on there as well. But let's go quickly back to the poll. Let's see what you felt, just to remind us all of where we were at before the session. Most people were falling into the bracket of only knowing a little bit about this, and actually 20% even saying they didn't know this topic well. Now we have 25% of you, that's pretty overwhelming actually, saying that you understand future facing at CMS extremely well, with 62% of you saying very well. So phenomenal thanks to our panelists today, because that shows us that you really imparted some interesting knowledge. So thank you so much. Huge thank you to John as well, who has been a superstar in helping us pull together today's final very special event. Wishing you all the best in your applications, and do keep in touch with us. This isn't the end, and we will see you hopefully at some of our next events soon. Thanks very much, guys. Have a lovely afternoon and rest of your weekends.